Tara Coleman. Absolute pleasure talking with Tara. Nutritionalist, has a background in science and biotech, was a bench tech, as she calls herself. And, I don't quite understand what happens there. I know my daughter is one. You think I would. But she kind of goes, I opened the conversation, of course, with endurance racing and what the attraction is. It's one of her passions. But she helps people with their nutrition, with their health. And the particular audience that she does have are high achievers, perfectionists, and the challenges that go along there with working with that clientele. Just the view on nutrition and the whole kind of all or nothing mentality that many of those high achievers have and mindset. But she does have 3 pillars that she believes is the foundation of her frameworks: nutrition, science, eating behavior. And I wonder what you think the third one is. Tara, I thank you so much for your time. And I thank you for watching and listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. And here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others.
Any questions for me?
I've got plenty, and let's start with this. Make a case. Make a case for no. That's it. How are you? That's all.
Weather. That's the extent of the depth of this.
Make the case for endurance racing.
Oh, make the case for it. I don't know if I can. It's a little nuts. Well, I think it does kind of tie into probably what we're going to talk about today. I think one of the beauty of endurance racing, at least for me, is it takes you to interesting places, right? Like I don't endurance race on the streets of San Diego. I go into the mountains. I go to places that really allow me to be in awe and see incredible things. It puts you in a community of people who are fully committed to doing something that's difficult. And I think for me, the most powerful thing is it reminds you that the discomfort is temporary. When you're in it and your brain is like, stop this crazy thing. I don't know why you're still running. This is exhausting. Your leg hurts. And you think you're going to feel like that forever. And then all of a sudden you get distracted and see a beautiful tree and you completely forgot how awful it was just before then. So I think that I don't know, that mindset, that experience is something that I take into my everyday life.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. I try to get that mentality. I like to work out in the morning, and I had a big weight day yesterday. I remember thinking, halfway through it, this will be the hardest thing I do all day. Once this is over, it's all downhill, so yeah, you're right. Just trying to get the mentality of it's not going to be this bad. This is temporary is an important one.
It's a hard one too, right? Because when you're in it, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you in the world, but when I'm in it, I genuinely believe this is my new permanent reality, right? Like this is how things will be forever. And then you have to, remind yourself, last time I had this experience, it got better, or last time I had this experience, it was worth it, or you focus on something else. So I would say from a personal level, but full disclosure, it's the community, it is the
Mm.
environment that I'm the most drawn to.
Yeah, community is important. I was doing CrossFit for a while and there's a community there and you just end up making friends and like-minded, you're into getting into shape and there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah,
And even religion gets a bad kind of knock sometimes, but it does create a community. People, want to be with other people.
yeah. Yeah, I think that you could argue, and maybe we're getting too in depth and heavy right now, but that's what I think a lot of us are missing, right? I
Mm,
think there was a lot of baked in community into society, and for a lot of different reasons. At the very least, it just looks very different, right?
mm,
And I have a gym that I love, and I would argue that working out is not that great, but what gets me there is excitement to
mm,
see my friends,
mm.
or full disclosure, or just acquaintances, people to have small talk with, right? That community where you feel a little bit less alone, you feel a little bit more aligned, right? You feel a little bit more seen, and I think that that's more of a driving force than lifting heavy things.
Mm. Because
For me
Derek,
personally.
yeah, me as well. I mean, the technology is separating us. I mean, it wants to create kind of this digital community that just lacks in so many ways, for
Yeah,
me at least.
yeah. There's a it's easier to hide and perform, I think,
Mm,
right? When you are in a situation that you're face to face and vulnerable, and in this description, sweaty and maybe
hmm,
struggling, I think it really pulls out your full humanity, and I think, and comparison is never great, but sometimes, the gym I go to, everyone is like, I'm by far the probably oldest and least fit,
hmm,
right? And so I see people that are pushing it just as hard, struggling just as hard as I do. And if I just saw them online, I'd look at them and I'd be like, "You're perfect. You
hmm,
don't struggle. You have it all together."
hmm.
But when you're with them and next to them, you see that humanity and you feel them. That I think is it's just something that there's not as much baked in opportunity,
Right,
right? So you have
right.
to go and find your own.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I'm not here to, to look down at, the current generation or anything. It's just different now. I mean, my kids were brought up with very different things
Mhm.
than I was. My father, an Italian immigrant, got his first pair of shoes when he was 12. Right. So I can't relate to that. I could tell that story, but it's very hard to relate. So they're just going to have to adapt. And who knows if our generation, maybe I'm a little older than you, we're a little bit younger now and had these, you know, had this technology around, who knows how we would react to it as well. It's just, it's where it is. And we need to figure out how to make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you could also argue that technology does open a certain level of
Mm,
community.
mm,
You just have to be able to navigate it with to figure out what's true and what's not, right? And that's a packed conversation right there. But
mm.
I'm sure that younger generations feel connected in ways that maybe we don't understand, and disconnected in ways that maybe they don't understand.
That's
So
right. That's right. You started as a biotech scientist, Tara, and
yeah.
now your background, and now that's your background. Now you're really into nutrition. Do they collide? Does it conflict?
Um, Not at all, actually. So my full story is, when I definitely was not born a nutritionist. I did not grow up as a healthy kid. I was, Gen X, single parent, latchkey kid, lived
Mm,
on fast food because it's what I liked and what was fast and convenient. But I was born a scientist, I think. I can send you a
mm.
picture. My earliest memory of my Halloween costume was Louis Pasteur, which was a little ridiculous. but
But important
but
nonetheless.
yeah,
Pasteurized
exactly. But
milk, the whole
but I,
method.
I
Yeah.
was a big fan. I was a big fan when I
That's
was,
a,
I don't know, 7.
hmm.
Um, and so, and So I loved science. I loved it in high school. And when I was very young, my mom actually passed away from
Mm.
heart disease. She was 36.
Ugh.
And so I really, what was baked into me and what I was longing for was to figure out health, right? And in my brain at that point, I figured if we can figure out genetics, I was really interested in gene therapy and things like that. I was like, if we can figure out the gene and fix it,
Hmm.
problem solved. This is
Wow.
great. And so that's what brought me all the way through college and into my first career in biotech. I was a bench scientist and a computer scientist. Um, and what I found was a lot of the stuff we were working on was more lifestyle. And personally, I started showing some warning signs for heart disease, high cholesterol, high CRP,
Mm.
and my doctor said, you need to stay active and focus on your diet. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And she said, I really don't know. And so that started my journey of going back to school and figuring it out. So the value direction has always been the same. The methodology has changed slightly.
I just moved to this location a couple years ago. I had to get all new doctors, and I was so relieved when my general practitioner asked me what I ate. I was like,
Right.
If this person doesn't ask me what I eat, I'm going to be so upset because it's just
Mhm.
food is medicine. They need to know what we're putting in our bodies so they can know how to treat us. It
Yeah.
seems so simple, right? But as a child, we were never asked that. We were just like, you got a cold, take, with this or whatever the issue is. But it seems so simple. What does a bench scientist do in biotech? What should we know about that?
Mm.
Paint the picture for me, Tara?
Yeah, I just sort of threw that word out. Basically, so I worked for a lab where if any sort of therapy is going through the FDA, right?
Mm,
They have to go through an extraordinary amount of tests to make sure that it's safe, to make sure that it works. And so it's cheaper for companies to hire contract research labs to actually perform those tests.
I see.
And so the lab that I worked in performed tests to see if there was any antibody reactions, which could be a
Hmm.
good thing or a bad thing, and to see how long, if it was a drug, it would stay in someone's system. So that's what we kind of specialized in. But our clients would be probably names that you recognize,
I see.
Pfizer, things like that.
Mm. One can't wonder. I mean, I'm an ingredient reader and it annoys everybody around me, but that's what I'm going to do. But some of those things that they put in those ingredients, how did they pass? The things they're doing to us, like the dyes and things like that. They have to go through all this FDA that you're talking about, all this process. How did they go through knowing what we know now? When those tests were done, they weren't conclusive. Explain.
So I think we're talking about two different things. So I'm talking
Ah,
about if like I'm talking about medicine,
I
right?
see.
And so food is regulated quite differently than pharmaceuticals are.
I
And
see.
so that was the area that I was in.
Hmm.
Um, Food supplements would fall into that as well. The regulations are quite different.
Hmm. And so you didn't last there long. You liked it. You didn't like it, but you just kind of learned. It was a learning experience as a bench
Yeah, I
technician.
mean, in some ways, I loved it. Like I said, the value direction was to help people, right? And I was doing that. Um,
Hmm.
but I became passionate because I went to my doctor and then I went back to school just for fun. I was young enough to think that that was
Good
still
for you.
fun.
Yeah.
And I really became passionate. I found that I was really good at kind of taking these complex ideas and marrying it with behaviors.
Hmm.
And for a number of different reasons, I decided to leave that industry and move into the nutrition industry. I mean, after I graduated from school and things like that.
How come? Why go into nutrition?
Well, I because I went back and made such changes to my life and saw the changes, right?
Hmm.
I was able to sort of turn those warning signs of heart disease around. It was the same excitement that I had originally for, I mean, it's still science, right? But a different methodology. It was also closer to the ends to the patient, right? It was closer to the result. I was very far away from any impact that the work I was doing was having.
Hmm.
But now, day in, day out, I mean, typically on the other side of this camera is a seat and is a human being, right? And so typically I'm talking to people and I'm seeing the impact that it has on their lives. And just from a personal fulfillment standpoint, that is, it lights me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're closer. Yeah, the impact is there. What? So, explain to me, Tara, what happens to the brain when somebody kind of falls into this all or nothing eating mindset?
Well, I think it's one of the most common things that I see, right? I think that there's a journey when we want to when we desire change. Um, Either it feels positive, maybe it feels scary. I know your personal journey probably had a combination of that as well, where it's
Mm.
like I got to get to health, I got to be there for my daughters, I got to move forward. So we can grasp at rules, right? Maybe we think a lot of us think of nutrition as a test to pass, right? So we look for rules, we look for black and white way of thinking, we look for ease, right? Because as you know, behavior change can be quite complicated. Now, the downside of black and white way of thinking is we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live, nutrition isn't like exercise that you do once a day and move on. It's a constant relationship that you have to manage day in, day out.
Hmm.
And sometimes when we're looking at things in black and white and we can't perfect it, we abandon it. And so
Mm.
people can vacillate from perfectionism to abandonment, and neither of those things really
Hmm.
work. And so, I mean, I shouldn't say that. Some people can live in that world quite comfortably. The people I tend to work with struggle, right? They have a hard time. They want to do a perfect job, but they have a trouble staying consistent. They typically say, "I know what to do, I just don't do it."
Hmm.
Or they do short sprints of perfection and then they're just exhausted and they fall. So my specialty is closing the gap between knowledge and behavior,
Hmm.
closing the gap between, I know what I want to do and I'm actually doing it so people can sustain, so people can do this long term.
So be more specific. Is it they eat well all week, but then they have one cookie and then they feel they've failed? Is it something as minor as that, or is it something they just can't like explain what you mean specifically?
It
Example.
depends on the person, but that is a great example, right?
Mm.
I think a lot of us don't really know what is enough,
Right.
right? Where's the line of health? Does it have to be 100% of the time? Sometimes we throw out these words like 80/20, but even that, like, what does that even mean? That can be very confusing. And so we can want to do things so well because it's so important to us. And to your point, maybe we have a cookie, maybe we have an off day, maybe we've been working all day and we're exhausted, and our kids are sick and they only want to eat X, Y, and Z, and
Mm.
we just can't do it all. And so we think if we don't do it perfectly, we shouldn't do, like, what's the point? Does that make sense or does that feel unrelatable?
No, it definitely feels relatable. But so I guess it's all what we're talking about. So does perfectionism sabotage why people eat healthy often?
With a lot of my clients, yeah. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but most of the people I work, I mean, are high that I work with are high performers. And so they have this skill set of driving and perfecting and striving that has really served them very, very well, right? This is
Mm.
actually a beautiful personality trait in a
Hmm.
lot of different ways. And so they take this skill set and they're like, excellent. I'm gonna I'm gonna put it over here. But it doesn't necessarily work, right? It's that black and white way of thinking. I mean, for a short time they can feel like they're on track, but anything less of perfect, they abandon it altogether. And
Wow.
change comes from consistency of action, full stop,
Hmm.
right? And so if you can't stay consistent with something, then you're not going to get to your destination. Make sense?
So how do you work with somebody like that that has taught themselves because they are where they are because they've done things that way, but when it comes to nutrition, it's not the end of the world if you have a cookie. So I mean, how do you work with somebody like that? Is it a mindset thing? You try to convince them, hey, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's all, well, it's a lot of different things. The first
Mm,
thing that we figure out what specifically is going to move the needle for them.
mm.
The nutrition industry is a noisy industry, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of information out there. And in my opinion, the most confusing part is most of it's true. It's just not relevant to you,
Hmm.
right? So we're just absorbing all this information, and people become almost paralyzed because you can't do it all the time. So we figure out what's going to work for them. So that's the nutrition science. Then we figure out how they're going to do it, right? Because most people don't struggle because they don't understand that lean protein, vegetables, and healthy fats are good for them. They struggle because they don't understand how to do that within the context of their life, right?
Mm.
Maybe they're traveling all the time. Maybe they're in airports and hotels. Maybe they have young kids, old parents, things that sort of complicate that. So we figure out a realistic way to do it. And then to your point, we focus on mindset,
Mm.
right? So there's these three pillars of nutrition science, eating behavior, and mindset that create stability. If you only have one or two, you can see short term success, but it takes a lot of effort. The mental load is high, and
Mm.
that's usually what just exhausts people. But if you have that stability, it is like a three-legged stool, right? Where you could sit there all day long.
And do you have to have the discussion, Tara, about taking the easy way out and going via pharmaceuticals, or how do you have that discussion?
Are you talking specifically about like GLP-1s?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends on the individual. I mean,
Mm.
I've been doing this for 20 years, right? I've worked with thousands of individuals and then multi thousands through group work. And not everyone is playing with the same deck, right? We all
Right.
have different biology, and we can argue if it's ultra processed food or diet culture or trauma, nervous system. I would say the answer is yes, but everyone has a different reality that they are coming with. And so I have many clients on GLP-1s that are quite simply a lifesaver for them.
Mm.
What it's not is it's not a complete solution.
Right.
It's a tool that goes into a complete solution, right? So the clients that I have that thrive are the people that were doing literally all the things, right? If you saw the way they were living their lives, you would be probably very surprised.
Hmm.
And there was a medical mechanism of action that wasn't quite working. And so a GLP-1 can help. In the same way as I've seen people that have made no changes that have just added the GLP-1 and they haven't seen results,
Hmm.
right? And so it's not, I mean, it's a great form of science, but it is just part of a complete story.
Right.
It's not the whole story.
Are they made to be temporary or permanent?
Oh
GLP-1s.
my gosh, I think that's the
Yeah.
$1 million question
It
right
sure
now.
is. Yeah.
Again, I think it depends. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what it is and what it isn't. I think a
Mm.
lot of people feel that it's simply an appetite suppressant, and that is part of it, right? Do not get me wrong. If it is simply, if that's the only mechanism that's working with someone, then they're, unless they significantly change their behaviors, you probably do have to be on it long term.
Wow.
If it is inflammation, some insulin resistance, things like that, those are things that typically can be resolved,
Hmm.
right? And so, in theory, you could taper off of it. My personal, and this is just a hypothesis kind of based on my experience, is you'll see people probably staying on it, but putting a lot more time in between. I think you'll see doses going down. And I think, and this is probably an unpopular point of view, but in my practice, the appetite suppressant part of it is the most inconvenient part,
Interesting.
right? Because that's not like, this isn't whoever eats the least wins, right? We have to make sure that we're getting enough nutrition into you. So usually I'm battling the appetite suppressant part, trying to get more food into someone.
Wow.
And that's a different, I mean, we can certainly go into that if you want to, but we'll see. I don't know what the future is going to hold for it.
Yeah, I don't either. And there's like even a term now that people have like in their face when they're, I forget what it's called, when they're taking these, because you're just lowering your calories, right? You're not you still need to eat real food to be healthy. Is there a difference between losing weight and being healthy? Because there's that fat skinny, right? That's talked
Mhm.
about sometimes. It's a big big issue there, and there's a mindset there that's got to be talked about.
Yeah, yeah. I think that we make the assumption often that being in a smaller body equals healthy, and that's
Right.
not necessarily true. Um, and health, gosh, health comes from what you are doing, what not what you're not doing, right?
Hmm.
Nutrition is an addition problem, not always a subtraction problem.
Hmm.
And right now, GLP-1s are the most common, I guess, diet that's happening, and it's so universal that we had this big data. But full disclosure, people have been doing crash diets for a really long time
Yeah.
and slashing their calories and not getting enough nutrition. And the exact same thing happens to that as it happens with GLP-1. So I
Hmm.
think another misnomer is that GLP-1s cause muscle loss, GLP-1s cause all these things. No, not eating enough food and not exercising causes that, right? So
Right.
you can do that with, a very low calorie crash diet. You could do that with, more of the traditional shake diets or things like that. It's just GLP-1s are so prominent right now.
Yeah, they sure are. You have this three pillar framework, Tara, where
Mm-hmm.
it's nutrition science, it's eating behavior, and mindset. Which one is overlooked the most, you think?
Probably the eating behaviors,
Hmm.
I would say. I think a lot of times the nutrition science is probably the most focused on,
Hmm.
right? That's what everyone wants to talk about, and it's exciting. I'm a scientist, right? So
Sure.
I mean, it's super fun to talk about. It's usually not,
Biohacks.
yeah, it's usually not the most important part.
Hmm.
I would say the eating behavior creates consistency, right? And I know you talk a lot about systems, which I relate to a lot because in my mind, like I help my clients build a nutrition support system
Hmm.
so they can stay consistent, and that would fall into the eating behavior part. And then the mindset, I mean, the mindset I think is just different for so many different people, right? I think a lot of times the mindset we think of as punitive, driven, be better every day, like this, a lot of this very, and I'm not against any of that mindset, but this very kind of aggressive, pushing mindset where for a lot of the people I work with, the biggest mindset that they need is a little bit of compassion, right? Is
Hmm.
understanding where the line is. Like I said, what is enough, what they need to worry about, and what they can just let go.
Hmm.
And both of those things for the eating behaviors and mindset, that again is what creates consistency. That's what makes this a long term solution.
You say compassion for themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lighten up, right? I mean, it's going to be okay. Yeah, your body's going to reward you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do most nutrition programs fail, Tara?
I think they're incomplete.
Hmm.
And so I just don't think they look at the whole picture. Um, and I think a lot of, and I'll say like traditional diets, take credit when people do well and blame them if they don't do well.
Hmm.
And that to me is, do not get me wrong, people need personal responsibility. I'm not implying that, but if if you're teaching someone something and they can't do it consistently within the context of their life, that's not the right solution for them,
Hmm.
right? It's like buying a computer and it not working on the weekends. Like, well, no, that's
Hmm.
unacceptable. I need this computer to work all the time, right? And so, like I said, I think a lot of nutrition programs lack flexibility or they have an incorrect definition. One thing,
Hmm.
let me take a step back. In my practice, we use the word, instead of discipline, we use the word commitment, which
Hmm.
I define as um, not relying on desire in the moment to take action, right?
Not
So
relying
that's
on desire in the moment. Hmm.
to take action.
Hmm.
And now the hard part with that is sometimes people can confuse commitment with being punitive, with being black and white, things
Right.
like that. So you have to find that personal definition. Now, on top of that, you need
Hmm.
compassion. And compassion is not losing the plot, right? Recognizing that that your nutrition is part of a big, beautiful life. And there's other things that are going to kind of push and pull. Now, outside of that, or what we can confuse compassion with, is justification or entitlement, right? I
Hmm.
deserve this. I get this. And that's not quite true either. And so I spend a lot of time with my clients figuring out what does that look like for them? How do you stay committed and compassionate, so we can create something that's sustainable and long term for you?
Hmm. Seems simple.
Hmm.
Can people do it by themselves?
I think so. I think so. I think that where a practitioner can help is speed,
Hmm.
right? One thing I
Accountability?
find, what's that?
Accountability as well?
I think keeping someone in something long enough to see the positive results is
Hmm.
100% true. But I also find that a lot of my clients are solving for the wrong problem, right?
Hmm.
They're blaming the wrong thing. And what I mean by that is maybe they are um, trying to use willpower to solve a systems problem,
Hmm.
right? They're like, oh, if I just try harder and push harder, it's like, no, you're actually eating the wrong thing. We have to figure that out
Hmm.
first. Willpower isn't going to get you out of that. Or they try and solve a commitment or discipline problem with a new diet like every 5 minutes, right?
Right.
It's like, well, that's not going to help you. You have to solve this first. And so I would say where any practitioner can help is identifying what the problem is and solving that, and then keeping them consistent until they see the positive results,
Hmm.
right? Because on the other side, the whole reason we do this is to feel as good as possible, right? And I think that can be kind of lost.
Absolutely.
And so you just have to get to the point where it's starting to pay dividends, right? And then it makes sense.
Hmm.
And so again, what a practitioner can potentially do, if it's the right fit, is take that learning curve that could potentially take this long, and compress that timeline,
Hmm.
right? So it's not going to take as long to get you to the other side of it.
Tara, how does one reduce the mental load of constantly thinking about food?
Well, I think that there's a couple things at play. I think the like food noise is having a moment right now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like talking about it, and myself included. I've talked about it with most of my clients in the past week. And there's two different components of it. First is biological. When we go too long without eating, or we have a diet that's too low in calories, right? Either intentionally, I want to lose weight, or unintentionally, like I skipped lunch, or too low in nutrition, right? Maybe it's plenty of calories, but you're not getting the right nutrients. Our stress hormones are released. Adrenaline is the main hormone. This is where hangry comes from, right? This is why people
Hmm.
get so um, angry when they get really, really hungry. Adrenaline's job is to force you to get sugar, either in
Hmm.
the form of sweets, or in the form of carbs, or in the form of alcohol. So that mental consumption, it can feel like lack of self control. It can feel like
Hmm.
obsession. It can feel like addiction, actually. I think that's why um, people will make some parallels. But this is a biology problem, right? This is, you have to get enough nutrition into you. So that solves that part of it. Then there's the mindset, right? And I think that's a little bit more what we've talked about today. And the solution for that is to simplify, right?
Hmm.
Is to figure out what's going to move the needle, what you as an individual need to focus on, so you can let the rest go,
Hmm.
right? Because all of that, trying to do things perfect, trying to do it all, that's the part that can make it overwhelming. And that's the part that can make you feel like you're never doing enough.
Hmm.
Um, and from my experience, that's usually what breaks people.
Hmm.
It's not understanding, you know, that chicken breast has a lot of protein. It's usually that is this enough idea.
Food addiction is a real thing. True or false?
I think food can have addictive properties, but I don't think it's the same thing as addiction as we know it.
Hmm.
Meaning that rush that I was talking about.
Right.
Certain foods, like ultra processed foods, will definitely light up our brain in a way
Yeah.
that a really good strawberry will not. So there are properties, but the actual, I do believe that people are more powerful than even the most sort of addictive food. Um, so it's not exactly the same thing.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypins.com/book. Thank you. Well, and I don't know any other addiction that you still have to partake in. You still have to eat to live. These other addictions, if you're gambling or whatever drugs, you just cut them out. But with food, you have to eat food.
Yeah.
So that's why perhaps it should be in a different category. I'm not sure, but that's a tough one to categorize and to deal with.
Yeah. And I think, it does feel similar, right? That
Mm,
rush of
craving. Yeah.
the craving and then the arc, that I
Mm,
have a craving, I relieve it, right? Where you have, let's say you're craving something, I don't know, like fast food or something, right? You're having this big craving, you have it, there's a rush and then there's a crash, right?
hmm,
And that crash, granted that crash is typically shame, right? Because it's incongruent with behaviors, but typically that craving is biology like I was saying before, so you are physically hungry, you're just solving it with the wrong tool.
right.
Or it's off limits, right? Scarcity is the most powerful psychological tool
Mm,
in the world, right? That's why advertising works. That's why, I'm sure you've heard the story of the what's it called? The McRib. Have you heard the story of
no.
McDonald's McRib? Well, it used to be a normal thing on their menu, and then people just kind of stopped liking it. It wasn't as popular, so they were like, okay, we're going to take it off of the menu. So then instead of completely taking it off, they only release it for a month a year.
Right.
So when people had access to it all the time, they're like, I'm not really into that. I don't want it. Now it's only a month a year, and people lose their freaking minds. They're like
Wow.
lined up down the street to get to it. So scarcity is very, very powerful.
Hmm.
And that's where the idea of putting food off limits can get a little complicated
Hmm.
in our brains.
Is there a nutrition rule, Tara, that you ignore?
That's a good question. Um, I don't know. What would be some examples of well, I guess I would, and maybe this is not the direct answer to this, but in a little semantics, I think that we can oftentimes put food in good and bad categories.
Hmm.
And I don't believe in good food and bad food, but I also do not believe that all food is equal.
Right.
So instead of food having value, um, in my mind, food has properties, right? And so we couldn't line up all food from, I don't know, kale being the best and Twinkies being the worst or something
Hmm.
like that. But
Spectrum.
they
Yeah.
certainly aren't the same thing, right?
Right.
So some food is satiating, right? Protein is satiating, fiber is satiating. So if you're hungry, that's going to kind of solve that problem. Some food is pleasurable, right? Let's not discount that sometimes we just want to feel good and we can
Yeah.
use food as one of our tools. Some food is energizing, right? Some food has medicinal properties, to your point before. So I think that removing value from food but adding properties is a way that I like to look at it.
Hmm. We mentioned this before, but you work with people that are highly successful, it would seem. They're these perfectionist type. Why do they fail more than the average person?
I think that I don't know if they fail more, but I think they take it harder,
Hmm.
right? I think that it is for most of the people I work with, they're very successful in every area, and then there's this one shameful thing that they
Mm.
just can't figure out, and it doesn't make any sense because it seems like we should all know how to do it. It seems like it should be easy. They follow all the rules, they do all the things. So I would say that if they quote unquote fall off track or struggle with it, they take it more as a reflection of a personal flaw and
Hmm.
something wrong with them rather than it's not the right solution for me.
Hmm. Is there a type of person that you won't work with?
Um, I would say, I mean, since so much of my work does, I mean, we do talk, I know we're talking about a mindset today, but I do talk about science quite a bit, right? So, but if someone doesn't have the capacity to, or the desire, I shouldn't say capacity, the desire to understand how they're relating to food, if they're not willing to go into any of the mindset, then we're
Hmm.
not going to work well together. Or on the flip side, if they take zero personal responsibility,
Mm.
right? If it's everything's happening to them, I'm not the right fit for them, right? And so this is not no knock on these people, but there's other practitioners that I think could probably serve them better than me because like I said, I'm in that I like working in that integration of personal responsibility and compassion, right? And
Hmm.
how do we do both? And you have to have um, a certain desire to integrate those two.
Do generally people come with you with a very large problem that you have to solve, or is it just kind of fine tuning?
Um, I would say that it feels very large to them.
Yeah.
And that the solution's usually a lot simpler than they think.
Hmm.
And so it's usually, like I said, they're focusing on the wrong thing. And once, change takes time without a doubt, but a shift in perspective or a paradigm shift is almost instantaneous,
Hmm.
right? And if you can identify the problem and get that flip, all of a sudden something that has been so heavy and so hard and felt like Mount Everest, they're like, oh, I get it. And then they
Hmm.
just do it, right? The people I work with are not afraid of doing things, they're not
Right.
afraid of hard work. They're just working against themselves.
Hmm. I know a big winner for me is once I started kind of documenting, what I'm eating and what the categories are, the calories, the protein,
Yeah.
etc., and what I'm putting in my body. When I first learned that a bagel was 330 calories, I couldn't stop talking about that for days, just with nothing, just nothing on it. So, and because we're, 2000, 2000 a day. And, it's just, yeah, that just knowing what you're putting in your body makes all, forget about the, you know, enriched flour and bleach, forget about, all those poor things, but just the actual
Yeah.
calorie level, just learning what that is makes all the difference in the world. Tara, is there a question you wished more people asked you?
I do wish that, more people ask me, well, are you talking about like someone that comes into my office
Anything.
or just in general?
Both.
It's
You
interesting.
choose.
I was saying before that nutrition is an addition problem. And
Hmm.
so, but if I'm sitting on a plane and I tell someone what I do, no one ever asks me what I eat. People only
Huh.
ask me what I don't eat. So they're like, oh, so you're low
Ah.
carb, or oh, you're vegan, or oh, you're gluten free, or the
Keto.
focus is always on what you don't. And
Uh,
it's very rare that someone asks me what I
that's
actually do
funny.
eat. Isn't
That's
that
funny.
interesting?
That is true, isn't it? Oh, so then you don't eat. Yeah, that's a
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. We talk about food for the full 5 hour cross country trip, but it's always what nutrition isn't rather than what it
And
is.
what it is.
And I
Very
think
interesting.
that's a big, and I think that conversation is shifting. A lot of, and it's probably because of age and stuff like that, but a lot of the demographic I'm working with right now is midlife women, right? And I think that in a beautiful way, midlife women are recognizing that they need to be adding, right? They need to be adding protein. They need to be adding strength. They need to be adding muscle. And that's been very different. I think that for most of my generation, it's whoever eats the least and runs the furthest wins,
Right,
right? And so
right,
it's been
right.
very much a kind of punitive, beat it off of you kind of situation. And now, to the what made me think of it was the bagel. When a woman comes in and finds out how much protein is in the egg, they're like, "What? That's it?" Or
That's
like a
it.
tablespoon of peanut butter. They're like, "What? What is this silliness that no one has told me before?" And so, long story short, it is. I love that the narrative is shifting to addition to,
Mm,
every time you eat, it's an opportunity to get nutrition into you, not an opportunity to like trick your body into eating as little as
mm,
possible.
mm. Yeah. Can you just generally speaking, just generalize the mindset of a mid-aged woman with a mid-aged man when you're working with them?
Hmm. Yeah, very generalized. I would say, like I said, most women come in with a very combative relationship.
Really?
Um,
With
yeah,
food or with
with
you?
food. Oh,
Ah,
no, no, with
uh,
with
I
with food.
I see.
Most women, it's interesting that you said, and again, we're being very generalized, the idea of learning what's in a bagel.
Right.
I've never met a woman that doesn't know every amount of calorie or everything that's in pretty much all food.
Right.
And so when they come in a lot of ways, it's unlearning, right? It's unlearning a lot of rules, it's unlearning a lot of history with food. Like even getting them to eat more can be very, very challenging. I would say when men come in, typically they've relied mostly on exercise, and nutrition has never been the thing that they
Mm,
needed to move the needle that much,
mm,
or the thing that they were that interested in. And for them, it is more learning what's in a bagel, what's in this, what's in that, because it's just something that hasn't been on top of mind for the most part. Um, and I think that that's probably, I mean, it probably just goes back to being raised. Most of the women I work with were brought to Weight Watchers when they were 10, so
mm.
they've known it for a long time.
Horrible.
And very stereotypically, I think a lot of young men are fed, right? Be bigger, be stronger, be faster, right? And so I think that kind of hangover throughout life shows up when they come in 35 plus, 45 plus, 50 plus.
That's fascinating, just the attitude towards I have a very good friend, and indulge me for a moment here, Tara, who's
Of
a
course.
mountaineer, and they make these high climbs in the cold, and when I ask her the difference between male and female, they have poop bags, okay, because they can't do it because it's cold and they can't leave it there on the mountain because it'll freeze and it'll be do bad things. So they have to kind of carry these poop bags on the outside of their bag because it can't be in the inside because it might open. So you see 12, 15 mountaineers and some men, some women, you see these poop bags on them. So when they come down, there's a place to deposit them. And the women kind of go off to the side and they slowly open the lid and they drop it in and they kind of run away. The men go over there and start weighing each other's bag and start high fiving each other as to whose is the heaviest. So when I ask her the difference between men and women, this is her response.
Poop bag.
Yeah, yeah, specifically the weight. Yeah. Yeah,
That's amazing.
very, very, yeah, very different. Has there been something in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Gosh, in the last month or so. Um, I would say in the last year. It's interesting. Nutrition, I'll speak specifically about nutrition. Even though we're getting a lot of new information, there hasn't been a big paradigm shift in nutrition
Interesting.
in quite some time,
Really?
right? I mean, I remember the first talk I gave 20 years ago where I told people every time they eat protein and fiber,
Hmm.
right? And it was 20 years ago, right? And that's kind of the same thing that we're talking about now to a certain extent. So I don't think
Wow.
there's been a lot of I think the public's become more aware of it, but not a huge paradigm shift, except recently muscle and how
Mm.
muscle, and this is, I mean, I would say it's become more prominent in my practice in the past year, but this has been around for a number of years. The metabolic impact of muscle,
Hmm.
right? And how it soaks up sugars and how it works as kind of an engine for our body. specifically towards women as well, but obviously this goes for both men and women. And I don't think that I've always emphasized protein, and I've emphasized exercise as from a quality of life,
Hmm.
but now I feel much stronger about maintaining the, not necessarily even the mass of muscle, but quality and functionality. Um, and that's changed in both the way I work with my clients now, the way that I treat my own body
Mm.
over this past year.
It is true. Muscle has been, lifting heavy things and talking about that. And there's been a lot of, well, we hear a lot about just diet itself, what they're putting in. The administration is trying to cut out dyes, as I mentioned before, and
Hmm.
things like that. Like I said, I'm a reader of ingredients, so I hope more people are, because we'll end up the consumer will end up shifting the market, right? If we stop buying the
100%.
ultra processed stuff, they'll won't make it as much. So just kind of just live with simple ingredients makes all the shift. But it's interesting that you were still 20 years ago, you were still talking to people about protein and fiber. That's fascinating. There's nothing new
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, it's the I do. I remember my literal first, little baby nutritionist talk, and that, I mean, my philosophy, one common thread, I mean, my philosophy has changed throughout the years, but has been blood sugar stabilization on some level,
Mm,
right? Because that's a way to manage, satiety, that's a way to cut down cravings, that's obviously a way to manage hormones, insulin, things like that. So that has definitely been a through line, which is why it started. But it's not new news, it's just louder news, which is wonderful. I'm not discounting that. I
right.
want all this news to be as loud as possible. So I think it's fantastic, but there hasn't been huge overhauls, like in my opinion, except in the science of the real benefit of muscle. I think we're going to see so much stuff about sarcopenia coming up,
Mm.
muscle quality, things like that. I think that's going to be probably the biggest topic of conversation.
Is AI helping nutrition?
Um, in some ways, I think it's fantastic, right? Like, let's go to the eating behavior part of it.
Hmm.
I think that when people are using AI to help meal plan, right, to help come up with grocery lists, to come up with like just sort of the annoying part of all this,
Mm.
I think that can be a huge help. I think that like access to information can be beneficial depending on the person, or it can be overwhelming,
Hmm.
right? And so information is only useful if it leads to positive behavior. And so if you, to your point, if you're like, oh my gosh, now I know what's in a bagel, I'm going to do something with it, that is a beautiful use of information.
Right.
If a person gets that information and now they don't know what to do. They're terrified of food. They love bagels so much, and now they think they're a bad person because they're eating bagels. Then that
Hmm.
information isn't useful to them, right? And so it's not inherently good or bad. It's really
Interesting.
what someone does with that
Mm.
information, and that just has to do with their relationship with food. That has to do with their personality type. That has to do with the person delivering the information. And so I feel like I went on a little bit of a tangent, but I'm a big fan of AI. So I think that it can do a lot of great things, but overwhelming information isn't always the best thing.
Mm. I was eating a bagel every day and sometimes a muffin. And then when I did research and found out how I'm starting the day already, you know, 40% of my calorie intake was shot,
Yeah.
that's what made the difference for me. So I started my business, Tara, back in the 90s, and I was working way
Mhm.
too hard and uh not paying attention to myself. I was in my 20s. I was indestructible. My goodness, right? So
Yeah.
I wasn't exercising as much. I was developing all these poor eating habits. I get in front of the doctor and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So I knew I was getting big, but I didn't know I was that big. And I would just start to buy my clothes a little larger. And, your body's wonderful that it just adapts, And so, but
Mhm.
she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. Of course, my oldest was just born, and it scared the life out of me. It didn't motivate me; it angered me, but eventually it motivated me. But I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. What have I done to my? I can make these bad decisions with me, but it's my family now. So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 120 pounds, and I kept it off. So you can't look at these things like finishing lines, right? A lot of people kind of break through the line and go back to old habits. These are lifelong changes. So when I tell people this, they always say, you say, what didn't you not eat before? They said, what did you do? And I said, well, just discipline people, just kind of routine, focus, motivation, just discipline. When I mentioned discipline before, you mentioned it. You mentioned compassion and commitment. But how does discipline play a role in your life, Tara?
Oh gosh, I think it plays a big role in my life. Um, and this, hopefully this isn't a roundabout way of saying this, but I spend a lot of time thinking about values in my life, right?
Mm,
What's important to me, the direction that I want to go in, things along those lines. And to me, matching my behaviors with those values is how discipline shows up, right? Am I, these are the things I believe in. Are my behaviors matching that? And the discipline is a consistent check-in with that. And
mm,
honestly, it it's fun. Like, it feels good. I mean, sometimes I have to call myself out, but I do think, I mean, we talked about the word discipline, which I discipline as a concept is powerful. Discipline as a word can be triggering depending on the
yes.
person,
Yes.
and sometimes I think we can think of discipline as a punitive thing, but in that context, it's exciting for me. It feels really good to match my behaviors with my values. And if I notice incongruence, sometimes it may mean that my values have changed, right? So I need to massage that. Other times it means that my behaviors need to change.
Mm. You did mention consistency and compassion before because you say you don't use discipline in the office because it can be triggering for some people, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the person. I mean, the three words that I typically use is I will use discipline if people like it, commitment,
Mm,
and then devotion.
devotion.
And I think, they all, it really is, I mean, to kind of circle back, it's moving in the direction of what's important to you. And I think a lot of our frustration and suffering is when we want to be going this way, but our behaviors are leading us
Mm,
in a different direction. And that huge gap, that's suffering, that's torture, that's loathing, all that kind of stuff. And so pulling that gap closer, which sometimes is pulling this side closer too, is pulling the, your ideal life closer to your actual execution. That I think is really the point.
hmm. Tara, I'm trying to figure out right now. You're a scientist, you're a nutritionalist, um, you work with people. Do you, how often, let me put it this way, how often do
Mhm.
you ask your gut to come up with an answer? I'm trying, this the science versus art. And I see you as a scientist, but I do see some art in you. You still like endurance running and you like cooking and you like, some of these non scientific, well, they still can be scientific, but pursuits.
Yeah.
So, how often do you involve your gut in decision making?
Mostly.
Really? You
I'm
start
yeah,
with it?
I would say that I mean, as a rule of thumb, in my life, I'm having a conversation between my brain and my gut pretty much
Hmm.
all the time,
Hmm.
right? From your inner knowledge, and your, I guess, your mental knowledge and your body knowledge. I think that's a very consistent thing with my clients. I mean, when someone comes in, or if I'm with them on Zoom, I'm looking at them as a whole person from the get-go, right? What language are they using? How are they carrying themselves? What's making them emotional? What's making them excited? Because that's going to dictate the direction that I go in. That's going to dictate our starting point. And so, to your point, I think that a lot of it is an art. When I first started as a scientist, I wanted this all to be numbers. I
Right.
was like, my goodness, if I can just figure out the solution and give it to the people, everyone's going to do it,
Right.
right? And what I've learned throughout the years is that nutrition is a science, but eating is a behavior, and
Hmm.
that dance is one of the most important dances where you can't ignore either, or it's going to be an incomplete solution.
What's the largest obstacle you've seen from people failing at nutrition and health?
I would say I think it's two. I think one is speed,
Mm,
right? I think that we have maybe incorrect idea of how fast change should happen.
Mm.
And I think that the other one, and your mountaineering friend made me not the poop part, but your mountaineering friend made me think of it. We think that the goal is the end, but the
Mm.
goal is the halfway point,
Right.
right? And what tied back to the mountaineer is I mountaineer as well, and
Huh.
the summit is not the point. The summit, you're halfway there, and in all honesty, the way down is the hardest part because it's not exciting. You're exhausted, you're sloppy, not to be morbid, but that's where a lot of people die is on the way down. That's where a lot of people get hurt is on the way down because you have this like adrenaline and excitement on the way
Right.
up, right? It's fun. You're like, and then you see the top and you're like, I did it. This is the best thing ever. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go all the way down. And I think that with nutrition, we get so focused on the goal, which is important, that we don't think what we're going to do after that.
Mm.
And that's why we end up succeeding, failing, succeeding, failing, succeeding, failing, because we haven't thought far enough ahead.
I had the great pleasure of seeing Sir Edmund Hillary, the first person to summit
Yeah,
Everest at a this was years ago at a Microsoft event, and somebody asked a question. They said, "Well, there's a rumor that somebody actually summited before you," and he said, "Well, getting down counts just as much, right?"
exactly. Yeah,
So maybe
exactly.
they have, but they didn't get down, right? Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, that's, I mean, I feel bad for that person, but
of course,
that's a great way of saying it.
of
And I
course.
think,
Yeah.
when it comes to success with health in general, it's not who loses the most weight. I mean, I think you can have people who have lost 20 pounds 100 times in their life,
Mm.
right? And that it's doing it consistently, right? And I would say doing it in a way that is congruent with your life, right? You can, my personal definition of health, and this does not have to be anyone else's
Hmm.
definition, but my personal definition is I never want the way that I care for my body or my mind to be a limiting factor in the life that I want to live.
Oh.
Okay. So what that means to me from a pure physical health standpoint is I always want to be kind of adventure ready, right? I want to be, if I'm in Europe, be able to go and walk and see things and not be too tired. I want to be, if someone invites me out, I want to feel comfortable in my skin and not feel, I don't know, frumpy and embarrassed.
Mm.
It also means that I want to have the flexibility that if I'm, you know, with, my friends' kids and we're baking cookies, that I can do it with them and taste it and be joyful and fun, that I'm not going to be so rigid. And so, how that goes back to what we were just saying is I think that oftentimes we can achieve something in a vacuum, but it's incongruent with the rest of our life. And sometimes to make big changes, you have to do that, right? Like
Mm.
I would imagine, and I'd be curious, but with your weight loss, that's a significant weight loss in a short period of time. So you probably overhauled a lot of different things. And then there may have been some like, how do I massage this to be sustainable afterwards? I don't
Mm.
know. I would love to hear your experience with that, but it needs to be flexible enough to fit into a big beautiful life.
That's right. It's sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've dedicated my life to nutrition, and
Mm.
I have no plans of changing. I think it is
Mm.
important. It is also not the point, right?
Right.
A fulfilling life is the point. And so if the way that you're
Hmm.
treating your nutrition is an obstacle, that becomes an issue. And that can look like avoidance, right? I'm not taking care of my body. I'm 340 pounds. It's going to prevent me from being there for my children.
Mm.
It could also be, I am afraid to, you know, go to restaurants, or I'm afraid to go to my friend's house to eat because I don't know what food's going to be there, or that's a limiting factor as well, right? And so, like I said, it's a beautiful tool. I think it's one of the most important tools, but your life is the point, right?
Yeah.
This is a support system for that.
The simple fact of subtracting all sodas and sugary drinks with water is just that shift alone is it's very easy to do.
Yeah.
ice water is so refreshing. I mean, I can't get any simpler than that. I just love,
Yeah.
I could drink it all the time. It's just a simple shift, and that everything really follows after that. What motivates you, Tara?
Mm. Um, what motivates me with my work is the people that I work with, primarily. They are, oh my gosh, they're the most extraordinary people. They are literally holding up the world. They
Hmm.
are our CEOs, they are our mothers, they are the like person in our friend group that plans everything, right? They are doing so much. And they're doing this all the while about 30% of their brain is consumed with, should I be eating that? Should I be eating this? I need to lose weight. I need to be healthier. I need to do this. So it's almost paralyzed, right? And so my goal, the why, the reason I come into the office every single day is I want to free up that 30%
Hmm.
because I cannot even imagine the world that we would live in if these people were functioning at 100%.
Wow.
I mean, all problems solved, right? Because these are, like I said, the literal most extraordinary people on the
Wow.
planet.
So your impact to help them drives you, so they could solve
Correct.
more and help others and help themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. To give them, freedom to a certain extent. I think that a lot of them are in a little bit of a prison
Hmm.
of, like I said, of this constant narrative of what they should be doing versus what they are doing.
Hmm.
And I think that it's noisy. It's almost like living a life with someone talking in your ear all the time. Like, yeah, you can function, but man, that's annoying.
Hmm.
Right? Imagine if that went away, how much you could focus. So having extraordinary people at full capacity, living, as healthy as possible, living in congruence with who they really are, that's my
Hmm.
motivating factor.
So, given that motivation of, like you say, living in congruence, impacting these high performers, how do you measure success?
I measure success. I mean, I can tell you, I've gotten a couple emails in the past week of, I send out a newsletter, so I'll get like every once in a while someone will write back that I haven't talked to in a while. And when they say, I didn't even know it could be this good,
Hmm.
that's what I'm excited about.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of assumptions of what people typically mean by that. And usually, yes, outwardly they are living a healthy lifestyle, but inwardly they're no longer. It's not a struggle
Hmm.
anymore. It's not
Hmm.
a battle. It's not white knuckling, and they've been living. Prior to that, they've been living most of their lives doing that. And so I truly, I mean, yes, I do the quantifiable. If you come into my office, I'll measure your metabolism, I'll do your body fat, right? All of that kind of stuff. But the qualitative, that's I think the true change, right? The increase in quality of life, the increase of the quieting of that food noise. That's where I believe true success is.
Hmm. Do you call or consider yourself a coach?
I don't. I mean, I don't call myself a coach, but I probably am.
Hmm.
Right? I think that um, I think that there was always kind of a division of CNs and RDs versus health coaches.
I'm sorry,
But
CNs and RDs? I don't know.
so a registered dietitian is an
Ah.
RD, a clinical nutritionist, and then there's more health coaches. I'm trying to think of other names. There's always been like a little bit of a, I don't know,
Hmm.
different grouping, but I think a lot of what I do actually is coaching, and I think I've warmed up to the idea of that. There is a lot of science, and there's a lot of that, in what I'm talking about, and what I do
Hmm.
every single day. But the getting people through it, that's really the most important part. And to your point, that is more coaching.
What's the difference between a coach and a therapist?
Oh gosh, I don't know what the technical. I mean, I would assume the technical is education,
Right.
right? So a therapist would have to be, they would have to have undergrad and then a graduate degree, and then, potentially a doctorate, whether they are, a social worker or whether they are a doctor. Coaches typically and I'm not, so I don't know exactly, but there's different coaching programs where they go through, maybe a certification program or something
Mm,
like that that teaches
mm.
them skills, right? They are qualified, but it's not as traditional, I don't think, as far as education.
I heard one person say, don't know if this is true or not. Therapists look back, coaches look forward.
I bet a coach said that.
Maybe because a therapist would disagree. Maybe. I don't remember who said
Yeah,
it.
I have no idea. I have no idea. But I think that there's benefits to both. And,
Right.
um, I came from a pretty traditional initial education, right? Where I was,
Right.
like I said, in science, in pharma, things like that. And my clinical nutritional education was a more integrative, a little, more holistic and things like that. So I love the fact that I can kind of bring both of those
Yeah.
together because there's importance in both of them.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Tara, I love what you're doing. I love how you're helping people, and I love how you love to help people.
Oh, thank
It's a
you.
remarkable trait, and really, really appreciate your time. Anybody watching or listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is just my name, so taracoleman.com, or pretty much all social media. I'm Nutrition Tara. I would say Instagram's where I spend most of my time, but I'm everywhere.
You've got great Instagram posts, lovely. Tara, of course, Tara Nutrition Tara, and Tara
Yeah.
Coleman. Um, .com. I so
Mhm.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Next time I'm in the general San Diego, Southern California area, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
I would love it. And you're in Tampa? Is
I'm
that
in
where you are
Tampa now,
now?
yeah, as we
But you were in
speak.
New York
I'm
prior?
originally from, yeah, as you can tell, I'm originally from
Yeah.
the Northeast. Yeah. Yeah.
Me too. So I
Ah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Couldn't stand the winters, kind of like you, I'm going to assume.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much.
All right. It was great meeting you.
Be well.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.